into something
Right.
is so compelling to me. And so for me, just limiting myself and saying, okay, I'm just going to use these 2 elements or 3 elements. I'm just going to let myself do these couple things. And how can I make this interesting? How can I make it compelling? How can I be genuine? How can I be as honest as I can be? How can I do all these, and then have this formal agenda, at the same time in a historical dialogue, and sort of sit myself within these places. I don't know, those are some of the questions I bring in, some of the things
Well, I mean, and this isn't a question, it was another observation I had when I was reading these questions, is that in a sense, metaphor really drives your work, it seems to me, right? This
and
idea,
at the same time, I hate metaphor.
Well,
at the
that's
same
a good
time.
that's a good question. I mean, because that whole notion of, when I was sitting back on the second floor, the first piece we hung on the outer wall, that green triangle, which is sort of a pyramid that's propped into the wall, and it has a very particular kind of physicality about it, which is, a little bit funny, right? As you were saying, some things are funny. That's one of the funnier ones.
Yeah, that's a funny one.
And that's what you need, right? That's like, to get that, it's okay to think that's funny.
Yeah.
And yet,
I mean, I think we can be, because they're funny, but they're also, there's a core. They each have the same sort of core, kind of like a person always has a core. I mean, I always felt like I have the same core I had when I was little as I do now.
Right.
And so I feel like each piece sort of has that seriousness and has that thing built into it, but they do have different personalities,
right,
as they should, and that's part of what I like, is that there is a difference, even though, maybe at first glance everyone's like, oh, these are all the same, or, the
right,
critics, whatever, but they're not. They all have their own way.
Their own character.
Their own character, definitely.
So why is metaphor the big danger?
It bores me, John. It bores me.
Well, I mean, there are rote metaphors, right? That sort of thing. But I'm wondering if that's the concern, or if it's that it's the interpretive structure that you're afraid of, that you're concerned about. In other words, someone laying an interpretive metaphor on top of one of your objects, turning it into something that's not.
Well, I can't do
Especially
anything
with
about
a conviction that, you did the work in the first place because it's not metaphorical. I mean, it doesn't have reference in any particular way, even though that's sort of the essence of what's going on in literary art forever.
Right.
But not for you.
Well, there we have it. Would you like Stephen to ask any more questions, or anyone? I open up the floor.
Come on, people. Come on, friends.
Anything you've always wanted to ask.
Oh, Lord. Oh, boy.
I know we have a lot of personal friends here, but they're not going to embarrass you in public.
Has to be done artwork.
Where does your color come from?
It just comes. It just comes. I basically, I don't know, I never have a plan. So I just mix. I will literally spend like an hour mixing a color. Just one.
Very long.
Well, when it's about to dry, it is. When you're about to pass out from the fumes, it is. But I'll spend a long time with the color, and I always just really want to make colors that I haven't seen before. That's really my thing, so that you can't really call it a gray, or you can't call it a lavender, you can't, but it's a color that has some sort of resonance. And then, the pieces are built up in layers, so each, one piece may have 5, 6, 7 applications under it, which were all, a color that was agonized over, forever. And that's part of what gives them their depth. But referential, no. So yeah, there's no story here behind. It's a reference to the tile and the.
Always says that his stuff comes from the environment.
Mine doesn't.
Who says that?
Yeah. And it's interesting because when I was at Jurassic, I was there and, people were asking me, well, how did that inform your work? And, did the nature inform your work? And I was like, I kind of went the opposite direction from the nature. I mean, not really on purpose, but just,
No California light for you.
no light whatsoever for me.
She wants to make art in a bunker. If anyone has a bunker, they can loan her as a studio.
How do you feel about a tear or damage to a piece? Do you feel like it reconstructs, you want to reconstruct the piece, or do you feel like it's become something else
Do you mean when someone else does it or when I do it?
when someone else does it?
Oh, yeah, well, like when that just happened.
Those things are going to happen. Objects in the world.
Yeah, well, for one, once it's done, and I can't really do anything about it. So in that sense, I have to sort of let it go, but they're so not the same. They're not the piece I intended to make because I do own every little possible thing that happens
Your
on
own
their
tears.
surfaces. Yeah, well, because everything
Right,
is,
right.
yeah, everything is a mark, and so when I'm not doing it, or it affects the whole piece, especially since they're so subtle. In some senses, I've been able to repair some things, but it's really never the same piece. It really never is. But at the same time, at the end of the day, it's a piece of paper, and it's not a human being, and so.
Right.
What can you say?
Well, I mean, I guess what I would say
Yeah.
is that there's a process that you put into making it,
Yeah.
and then the process whereby a work gets damaged is a different process.
Yeah.
And so you have these two processes colliding. One is making a work, which I think the way Praj expressed it is quite pure in a sense, right? And on the other hand, there's the fact of being in the world, which is never pure. So therefore,
Yeah, being in the world's not a good.
those
Has
things are
not
gonna
been a
collide.
good thing. So-
I see a question in the back.
Raj, could you talk a little bit about the scale of your work and if you have interest in being larger with the work? Or very
There is a
small?
larger one that's 7 feet. It's not here, and I was able to. I've been scaling up actually, mainly because I've had the space to scale up. But prior to that, I kept them small because I wanted them to be intimate. I wanted people, I wanted them to have a relationship to my body, and so that's how I was sort of encountering them. And then to have people be able to walk up to them and sort of be greeted by them and not feel overpowered and sort of just let the thing shed its own little soul on people. So yeah, they stayed small and fragile and intimate for that. But I think I've managed to scale up and still have those qualities. So I don't want to lose those qualities. I want them to be vulnerable. I want them to be fragile. I want them to be contemplative, but still also, because they are physical, I like them having a proportion to myself just because I have to make them, and they seem to make more sense to me that way. But, yeah, I don't see them as like better or worse, in terms of the scale. And so I think I worked really small on purpose for a long time to sort of make that point, that something that's really small and fragile can have that big evocative presence. So we'll see what happens.
So
Never
what do you
say
see,
never say never.
Where do you see the work going next?
Well,
Getting bigger.
we are big, dark, and broody right now.
Big, dark, and broody.
We still
so
are.
Maybe that Richard
We
Serra show
still
had
are
some
sort
impact.
of. We are still sort of flat and dark and broody right now, but yeah, nothing like.
Now, how long?
Not the same sort of.
How long have you had this studio in the Bayview?
About less than a year.
Less than a year.
Yeah.
Another book? Are you going to do any more?
I have it all going. I just need this one off the shelf. Need this one out of my closet so I can.
You can start producing
I'm
your
always
next one.
writing, so like this was really. I'm always writing while I'm in the studio.
Uh-huh.
So it's part of my process, and it
Did you
just
start
sort of
writing
happens.
when you were in
I
Ohio?
was going to be a writer, Stephen.
Oh,
That's why it took me 7 years to graduate from undergrad, because I changed my mind. I was
Oh,
gonna be
well,
a
that
writer, and then
seems,
I switched over.
I mean, now when I think of reading this book as being as sophisticated and non-redundant and insightful as it is, it doesn't surprise me that you. But Sarah was going to be a writer too.
Well, it's important for me to still have. I mean, I feel like I have my own agenda separate
So do you
from
find
him.
yourself reading
Always.
all new things? Oh, you do.
Always in my dark red, cranberry red room.
Oh,
Constantly. I'm never without a book.
okay.
So, yeah. I mean, even if it's a children's book, there's just something. There's always something. Hi, Amy.
I was wondering, while you were working on this show, were you thinking about these walls particularly, and this floor, and these proportions?
No, because all the work was done. The work had been done. So I never, I mean, with all of the work, I haven't thought about the actual space. Cause
It was left with John to think about.
Yeah, that was John.
We arm
John
wrestled
was the
over
match-
placement.
It turned out really well. It turned out really well.
Yep.
Yeah, so it didn't, but we did, I mean, it did change, what we took out. We took out a few that weren't gonna fit in and, things like that. And then, with the space, you have to really think about, when we talk about damage and traffic, and so that sort of changed what went where and how things went, but I think it has a really nice flow to it.
Yes.
This isn't exactly a question. I'm really curious about what the back looks like.
Oh, a lady never tells, man.
I watched Ronnie Blayton make some pieces, and there were these like incredible, there were the maquettes, of the pieces, but there was absolute chaos inside these serene surfaces. I keep wanting to like take your pieces off the wall and
I know, isn't that nice? Yeah, well, because I still want to, even though I'm playing in that second and third dimension, I still like them having that painting reference and the drawing reference and that thing to the wall. So I believe there's only one piece here that is a 360. And so most of the pieces, the backs are most of them are just left. So whatever ended up happening while I was making it, whatever, if there was a bug on the floor, it's on the back of the piece. You know what I mean? Whatever it was, it's still there. And the only time I do anything to get rid of it is if it's distracting in some way to the front and the sides in a way that's just too much. But I don't like to get too, I don't know, I feel like when I go back in there and make it all pretty, then I feel like it's just not, I'm just being deceptive or something. Like I'm making it something that it isn't.
you can feel the unfinishedness. That's important.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of them where the interior, I have a few where I have worked on the interiors, and they're that way because of the way the piece actually is and functions, where it just functioned better to have an alternate space to sort of look at it through. So some of them do have that, but no back. So they have, so yeah. No, yeah.
They're kind of raw, and at the same time very
They're
gentle.
raw and gritty, yeah.
But they're very gentle.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm very careful about having everything be archival because they are so rickety looking, and people always ask me if they're going to fall apart. I'm like, no, they're not going to fall apart. They never do, So I like that little dichotomy of having it be sort of this casual, raw, gritty thing that's still so thought over and so specific at the same time.
Philosophical.
Oh, yes. Chris?
So the ones that are hanging up on the wall, are they intentionally hung up that way so that's the top and that's the bottom? Or?
Yeah. Yeah, I know, because it's hard, sort of, because like John's way taller than I am, so we do try to, get it so that it's a nice height for everybody to sort of have that sort of torso-body relationship with them. But so yeah, we did the best we could. But yeah, like.
What he's saying is, do you mark this will always be the top.
Yeah.
You can't.
Or do you feel like you can rotate it?
Oh no! Oh yeah! No! Yeah! No! It's what it is. It's what it is. So that's why they're so strange to install, because only I can.
Yeah, only she can.
Only I can do it, people.
Vouch
When I
for
really
what?
say it, I mean it. Because I know my wonkiness,
Another similarity with Richard Tuttle. The stories from SF. I wasn't there then, but the stories.
Well, things are okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, when you make work that's so immersed in a kind of, that has its own space and its own character, and then take it and put it into an environment, you must do that extremely carefully.
Yes.
And we often assume that that once paintings move off of the church walls, they're not frescoes anymore, that you can just take them and put them wherever you want. But in a sense, there's something much more fragile and contingent about the way your work operates in its architectural domain.
Right, because it's almost like the installation of it and the act of it and how it's happening is just as important as the piece. And even the hinging is even like a whole, I don't want to get into it, but it's a whole engineering project, really. I mean, and it's kind of wonderful, like that same thing of that, this like a little rinky-dink piece of paper is giving me so much trouble, it's sort of fascinating that way that it can be so interesting and complex. So.
All right, well, if there's no more questions, thank you all for attending our roundtable discussion, and it is a round table. We have some refreshments, I believe, in the next room. So there's a little room on the side here. So feel free to help yourself to bread and cheese. Glasses of beverages, I believe, are also available. And tell all your friends there's only 2 days left
2
to see
days
this
left.
fantastic show.
2 days
Look
left.
like a relative of yours.